All right, so we're going to talk about marketing today. And what I've done is I have really put together just a combination of just marketing ideas and tips that will ultimately lead to better results when your book is actually written. So in our previous parts of this, we talked about setting up a strong foundation. We talked about writing, we talked about publishing, and now we're talking about marketing. So this whole series is very complete from start to finish. But I didn't want to get into advanced strategies around marketing because if you are just now thinking about the book writing process, talking about too much marketing right now would probably have an adverse impact. And that is not the goal I'm going for you. So I want to focus on how can we give you some bite-sized ideas to really think through the marketing side of this. So that way you can start to kind of drip and drab information to your community and network as you begin and embark on this journey. So let's just dive in to what we're going to cover. So we're going to cover the three parts here. So building an early marketing foundation, leveraging various marketing channels, and then building a supportive network and brand. And so they're going to be just a series of tips that are kind of like little short stories under each of these buckets. And there's a lot more marketing related information that exists, but this is really just kind of some core stuff that I think will be valuable as you begin. So if we start over here with the building an early marketing foundation, I'm going to go through 6 different ideas for how you can start to build your early marketing foundation. And as usual, I know that I talk fast, so you should be able to pause this recording and be able to kind of just take it in. And, if you have any questions, I do have my email address that I'll list at the end of this presentation. You are absolutely welcome to reach out to me and ask any questions that you might have on your mind. So the first tip here is tell someone today. I want to talk through here, some of these tips, they're really simple and very fundamental. But when you start the journey of writing your story and telling your story, whatever type of book you might be writing, the best way to begin is really just telling somebody right now. And the reason for this is that it's helping you not have to do this alone. It's allowing people to see that you have this really awesome thing that you're working on. And it helps people feel like they're part of the journey with you. And it doesn't mean that you have to tell 100 people. It doesn't mean that you have to tell someone that's going to make it super scary for you. It could just be telling your partner. It could be telling a coworker. It could be telling your best friend to say, hey, I'm really thinking about writing this book. And this is my idea. And I'm looking for a little extra accountability. So I just want to share this information with you. And what's great about this is that this person might also be the first person who lines up, who cannot wait until your book comes out, and they might be your first buyer. So I am always a fan of kind of throwing the accountability on here. So I have both of my social media handles. So if you would like to, and these are on pretty much all platforms, you are welcome to tag me and let me know that you are working on this book, or send me a direct message on one of these platforms and let me know that you've decided to do this. It really does help from an accountability standpoint, I promise. And it might feel very premature to think about this, but a lot of these tips might start to feel premature. But when we think about the book writing process, there's almost kind of 2 parallel tracks that are happening, where you have the book writing is on one side of things, and then the book marketing and promotion is on the other side. And the sooner you can start talking about the marketing of your book, the sooner you can start thinking about strategies and things that might work for talking about your book and promoting it, the more successful, or the more chances for success you'll have further down the road. So the next tip is document your journey. So even if you don't know, okay, let me back up. When we talk about documenting our journey, there are a lot of people, like just a lot of people in the world who have no idea anyone in their lives personally has written a book. And so I think sometimes, especially in my case, where I was an author before I started this publishing company, I've written 7 books. My 7th one just came out on October 11th. And before that, I was this person for a lot of people, where there were a lot of people who were like, wow, you're the first person I know to have written a book. And it was a lot of, old classmates or family members. But my network of people is I'm always around people who are thought leaders, who are speaking, or who have written books. So for me, I feel like everyone has a book. However, we have to remember that that is not true. So the more that you can document this experience for others, it allows people to really feel like they're a fly on the wall to your process. And when we're talking about documenting this, it's not just saying, hey, I'm writing this book, but it's actually bringing them along the ride with you. So it's showing, hey, I'm struggling today. I'm working on this book, but I'm struggling right now. And I don't really know how I'm going to best move forward. Or, hey, I'm having a really amazing day. I talked to somebody about my book. They're super excited about it. And so you're kind of showing those highs and lows throughout the whole writing process. So that way people can really feel like they relate to you and your story. And we don't want to underestimate the excitement level that people are going to have, because people do get really, really excited, especially when it's somebody they know. And we want to engage with them so we can help kind of, speak to their curiosity, because then they might ask you questions. It's more information that you can start sharing with others. So if we're looking at this idea of, telling someone today and being able to document our journey, there's something really kind of valuable and magical about just really taking people along the ride for you, the ride with you, I should say. Now, this is building on the tell someone today, but it's talking about telling a group. Like, let's tell a group of people, like, what does this actually look like? And this could be any type of group, but I like to add a little bit of accountability into this by having you set a timer if you so choose. And what's great is that my book did just come out, and I've already seen a bunch of things that I've been tagged in where people have taken this almost verbatim, where they're saying, Jenn, like in my book, I actually have a line that people can grab. That's basically like, Jenn is basically forcing me to post on social media that I'm working on this book. So it's great that people are already doing this. If you feel comfortable with it, take it. If you don't do it. But the goal here is to provide that accountability for yourself, because when we are writing a book, it can be very hard to stay focused. And there's a lot of ups and downs in this process. And so when we're having those highs and lows and those ups and downs, we want to be really intentional about how can we get the right support around us to make sure that we cross this finish line, which we did talk in one of these previous sessions. And so telling a group on social media can certainly create an additional accountability touch point, but it can also get more people excited for you and more people to be anxiously and eagerly waiting for your book to come out when it does come out. Whether it's 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 10 years, doesn't really matter. It's a matter of just kind of bringing people along on this journey with you. Now, something that is very confronting to a lot of authors is start calling yourself an author today. It's interesting because I find that all writers are not authors, and not all authors consider themselves writers. And it took me a long time. And even sometimes I still struggle with this idea of calling myself a writer. Like, I'll call myself an author all day long, but sometimes I don't consider myself a writer, even though I have written 7 books and I'm already working on an 8th book. So clearly I've been writing for the last decade almost nonstop. And not everyone is comfortable in calling themselves an author, and especially calling yourself an author when you haven't actually really started writing the book yet. So it could be a confronting idea. However, it can help because it puts us in a different state of mind that allows us to kind of move through those obstacles and those mindset challenges and all of the little lingering things in our minds that are telling us, that you can't write this. You're not, the gremlins, right? Like, you're not good enough. Who are you to write this book? Why is your point of view different? You're just like everybody else. It's like the mean stuff that we can sometimes tell ourselves. So if we can start kind of standing in this power of feeling confident about calling ourselves an author, then we'll be a lot more confident even further down the road when we actually really have to make ourselves vulnerable and start sharing with people that we not only wrote this book, but we published this book, and now we want to get people to buy the book. Like, it can be a really confronting experience. So we want to kind of stand in this place of empowerment first and foremost, so that way it'll help us now and even more down the road. Next tip. is making a list of related podcasts. So there's a lot of reasons for this. Number one, when we're promoting a book, and this is both from the promotion of a book standpoint, but also kind of the research of a book, is there's a lot of opportunity for us to be on a podcast, to talk about our work, and to have those podcast listeners feel so connected and related to what you're talking about that they themselves feel inspired to go buy your book. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be going for podcasts like Glennon Doyle's podcast that has millions upon millions of subscribers. It could be that you're writing about something that's really niche and narrow, and you found a podcast that has 500 subscribers to it. And you are hitting it just so perfectly that you get 200 of those 500 people to take action, whether they're joining your mailing list or they're buying your book or they're supporting you in some way. So if you can focus on making a list of related podcasts, put them down on paper just so you can have an idea of who you might want to reach out to later. But from a research standpoint, you can also be listening to these podcasts and identifying where are opportunities that you see that someone is talking about the topic that you're writing about, but maybe they're missing something. Maybe they're coming at it from a different lens or a different angle, or you're coming at it from a different lens or a different angle. So the more you can kind of consume other people's content, the more it can help you refine your specific approach and help you see with more clarity how your approach is a little bit different than somebody else's. And we talked about a previous tip about looking at Amazon reviews and seeing what a book is doing really well and where a book is kind of missing the mark. This is a little bit kind of in that same vein where you can kind of listen to some podcast or read blog post or just follow other people's thought leadership to kind of see where your unique angle will fit in. Which brings me to making a list of blogs. So there's a lot of opportunities for guest blogging. So it is a matter of finding the right website that has the right approach, the right content that matches what you are doing, because you don't want to be doing this. And I don't know if anyone has this experience because I get it all of the time. My previous consulting work was around LGBTQ marketing and communications. And in that previous consulting work, I have a website that still exists that has over 500 blog posts on it. And it's been up since 2012. And those are very intentionally created blogs, a lot of SEO on them. So that site gets a lot of traffic still. So I still get emails, at least I would say 2 or 3 times a week, where people are asking to be a guest blogger on my website because they feel like they have something of value to offer. 99% of the times it is some kind of spam saying, hey, can you include this resource about, a lot of times it's drug addiction. That seems to be the most common one that I get. Or it is like university, I don't even know how to describe what it is. It's like a list of universities that have some kind of specific program. Neither of those things have anything to do with what I'm writing about. It's not to devalue what those people are approaching me about, but there's absolutely no connection or correlation to what my blog has. So I immediately just report it as spam and delete it because there's no intentionality set behind it. And you can tell that it's like a service doing it. And it's not like an individual person. So you don't want to be in that place where people are reporting you as spam and then deleting your request. So you really want to be looking at who has a podcast or a blog that just really aligns with what you're writing about, and reach out to that person and start to create a relationship. You don't want to just blindly pitch them and say, hey, I want to be a guest blog, I want to write a guest post on your website. Like, really get to know that person and figure out, are there other ways that you and they can collaborate together? Because it's going to have a much bigger impact than just kind of blasting out these emails saying like, hey, post this article about how to write a book on your website that's talking about radiology. Like, they're so disconnected that it would make no sense whatsoever. So we want to really just be intentional about this. And again, when you're seeing those people, they are thought leaders. They're people who are doing something similar to what you're writing about. And therefore you might be able to kind of create connections and opportunities there as well. Okay, so this is kind of the first section of, building an early marketing foundation. I had mentioned at the start of this, that this really is just kind of a series of tips all kind of woven together. And the intention is for all of these to kind of just be standalone. So we just went through 6 tips. You are welcome to just grab one of these that feels right to you and makes sense to you. You do not have to do all of them. My intention is to never make this overwhelming for you. I want it to feel like, okay, you know what I can do? I can focus on making a list of blogs. That is something that I feel like I can do today that is going to get me one step closer to being able to get my book published, or to get my book written, or to get my book into the hands of my ultimate readers. Whatever your end goal is, you can take one of these actions to help you get there. And it looks like we have 6 tips in the next section coming up as well. So it'll be the same thing. Grab a tip that works for you, feel free to leave the rest. If you're feeling inspired and you want to do a whole bunch of them, by all means, lots of options here. So the next kind of piece in thematically bucketing things out is just leveraging various marketing channels. And again, these are all just independent tips. A lot of this ties together to create one big cohesive strategy, if you will, but they are meant to be just these real small bite-sized things you can just pick up and run with it, that you don't have to do anything else in order to see success in doing this one thing. So if you are working on writing your book, one of the easiest things you can do right now is update your email signature to acknowledge the fact that you are indeed writing a book. So I had this in my book. Once I figured out the title of I knew the title of my book was going to be Publisher Purpose. It took our team probably 2 months to figure out the subtitle of the book, which is a step-by-step guide to write, publish, and grow your big idea. It took us forever to land on the word grow your big idea, or that phrase, grow your big idea, because we were trying to figure out how to include writing, publishing, and marketing in the title, but it's not all marketing, it's tips like this. And so we finally landed on grow your big idea, but it took forever to actually land on that, which is very common with authors in writing a book, is that the title, a lot of times, and then the subtitle is just a mystery. So we landed at a place of knowing what the subtitle is. And then immediately, that was the first thing I did, is I added it to my email signature. It was just kind of like a coming fall 2023. And it had, a link to it. It had a link to a page on the website where you could kind of click for more information. The amount of people who see that is extraordinary if you do spend a lot of your days sending and receiving emails. So it's a great opportunity and a great option to get people to start seeing it, whether it's people you interact with regularly or it's people that you're just now meeting. So say it's someone who could be a potential client and they see, oh, wow, they're writing a book. The benefit is that if you are already calling yourself an author and now you have your book right here in your email signature, it's getting people to say, oh, wow, this person means business and this book is coming in whatever time frame. You also don't have to put a time frame there. Like I put fall 2023 because I knew my goal was to launch in October. You can just put coming soon. Like there's nothing wrong with having it be vague like that. And then you can refine that date a little bit further as you continue. This is the next 2 are interesting kind of mirrors of one another, is making a list of buyers for your book. And the reason for doing this is to help you identify in even more detail who your target reader is, which we talked about target readers in, I believe it was the second of this series, I believe. It definitely was covered in this 4-part series. And so when we know who is going to buy our book, we know who we're writing for. And when we make a list of people who are our buyers, we can have this kind of practical list just there and waiting, knowing that you're like, all right, I had this conversation with somebody and they said, I can't wait to buy your book when it comes out. Perfect. Just put that person on a list. And it doesn't, I'm not saying a mailing list to spam them or anything like that. I'm just talking about like a spreadsheet or document somewhere that's on your computer, where you can then have, all right, I want to make sure I reach out to this person. Let's make sure that they know it's available. And then what you're doing is that you're growing this list over time. So by the time the book is written, published, and is available, you don't have to go through and try to remember all of the different people and conversations that you've had, you have that list of people where now you can reach out to them individually and say, hey, we had a conversation what feels like forever ago, but I just wanted to let you know that my book is finally available. And, I remember you expressing interest in it. Here's a link. So it's very casual. It is not, we're not trying to be high sales here. It's just reaching back out to people who genuinely expressed interest from the start. So that's one of the reasons why we'd want to make a list of buyers. Then the addition to this is making a list of people who are influencers. And when I talk about influencers, I'm really not suggesting people who have millions upon millions of followers. I'm talking about people who have a small sphere of influence. And if you have someone who is an influencer in your life that you can say, hey, would you be willing to do some kind of promotion or collaboration or whatever it happens to be in sharing my information with your audience? If you have that, by all means, please, please, please take advantage of it. However, I'm talking about people where it might be, you might be part of a book club. It might be your own book club that you're part of. And you can say, I'm working on this book. What do we think about having my book be something that we read collectively as part of this book club? That's an easy win. And that might get 10, 20 people to be purchasing the book and talking about it and passing that book along to others. Or, what I find, I'm doing a presentation, like right now, here's an example, is that, this is for the Salem State University Alumni Association. And so, this is a sphere of influence where I'm here because I'm also an alumni and your alums, and there's something magical about that because there's a sphere of influence over that, whether it's 4 people, 40 people, 400 people, or 4,000 people who are watching this. It doesn't really necessarily matter. Obviously, the more the better, and with any opportunity, but it's more about that connection because there's a connection on a different level. So it applies to things like if you're a board member of an organization, or there's some kind of online support group, or any of these different types of ways that we can think about how can we get in front of a group of people. And that group of people can be 4 people, it can be 4,000 people, it could be 4 million people. And so it's always interesting where I have in this third bullet point where it says think smaller. So often the advice is think bigger, but I think when we hear the word influencer, we immediately go to huge, wide influencing audiences. And really in this case, I'm talking about slow, small, manageable steps here that will help you create this accountability, create the promotional opportunities, but will also not make you feel like you want to go running in the opposite direction because this feels like too much or too overwhelming. Something else you can consider doing through, leveraging some various marketing channels is test driving your content. And what I love so much about books is that it does give you a format to really have to figure out how to express your information in a succinct way. If I even look at my book that just came out, the Publisher Purpose book I was just mentioning, if I look at that book, that entire book is a combination of things that already existed. It is a combination of our Publisher Purpose Author Lab, which is a Facebook group with like 1,000 people in it. And I run free workshops in there all the time. And it is a combination of the book cost blueprint that we have that talks about what does it take to publish a book. It's a combination of our 9 questions to ask your publisher blueprint. So it's all of these different things. And we even have webinars on there about how to pick your path for publishing. And so all of these things kind of existed before, but putting them in the form of the book really forced me to have to rethink how to consolidate a lot of that information, how to make it stronger, how to make it more impactful, and how to create a story arc from start to finish. So that way you can pick it up and get everything you need all the way through that process. So when we think about it from that standpoint, what our focus needs to be is how can we test drive this with other people? So as you're going through this process, if you are writing on, you're doing kind of individual writing. Like, so say you have a timeline, you're going to get this book written in 6 months. Your goal is to write, a 2,500 word piece a week, and you're posting it on LinkedIn, or you're posting it on your website, or putting it in your newsletter. The beautiful thing about that is that you're going to get feedback. Whether you ask for the feedback or not, you are going to receive feedback. So you may as well intentionally ask for feedback to be able to say, hey, this is what I'm going to be including this in my upcoming book. What are your thoughts? Like where, what might be missing or what's really resonating with you? And then what that will do is when you're in the editing process, you can refine that piece of content that you created, that article that you created, and you can make it better. So by the time it lands in your book, you've already had a number of people look at it and you've been able to fill gaps that previously existed that won't exist when the book actually becomes available. And what it also does is it helps you see the people who really are interested in what you're writing about. And they might be those same people who come forward and say, hey, I can't wait for this book to come out. Let me know when it does. And you can go back and put them on that list of your potential buyers sheet. So it kind of, can help you from all directions. But really what this will do is it just helps you from an accountability standpoint. Like it truly helps from an accountability standpoint. Building on this a little bit more is using polls. So we know that there's absolutely no shortage of opinions on the internet. That is something that will never not be true. And what we want to be thinking about is, are there ways that while we're writing and publishing, that we can use some polls to increase people's excitement about the book that is coming and possibly get you in front of other people who might be potential readers for your book as well. So there's a lot of polls. I actually just posted a poll yesterday in the Publisher Purpose Author Lab Facebook group that I just mentioned. I posted a poll yesterday because we have an author who is debating between her 3 covers. So this example shows different subtitles, which is very common. Subtitles, I was saying before about my own, they're very tricky to land on the exact right wording for. And so I'm always posting about subtitles. But yesterday I posted about covers. And I gave 3 options. And I was like, which one do you like? Either just like it, just put the number below it. Is there any feedback that you have on it? And what this does is you as the author, it helps you see what other people are seeing. So if the cover itself is sending some mixed message, or it's sending some inadvertent offensive message, or any number of things that from your one single vision weren't able to see, or whoever else you might be collaborating with wasn't able to see, it gives you a more well-rounded kind of opportunity for people to be able to step forward and say, hey, I really love this one and here's why, or I do not like this one at all and here's why. And there's a lot of different ways that you can post this on social media. So you can use, like SurveyMonkey is a popular one. I just use the Facebook poll all the time. I'm pretty sure LinkedIn has something similar. But what this is going to do is it's going to help your potential reader feel like they're part of this process, because they're the ones that you're asking their opinion of and they're providing feedback for. And they know that what they're providing is going to be rehashed, reconfigured, and then repurposed into your book later. So someone who knows that they were part of this process a little bit and they're feeling really excited about how they were part of this process, the beautiful thing about that is they're going to want to see the finished product later. They're going to want to see what your book is. So just another kind of idea here of how to kind of engage in just different kind of marketing channels and different mediums. And the final one for this section is about creating a street team. So street teams are interesting because there's a lot of different purposes for these. But a street team, sometimes people call it a hype group. Sometimes people will call it like your book launch team. And so there's a lot of times there's the street team component, which in my case, my focus, I had a street team for my book. It was a book launch team. It had 100 something people on an email list. And then there was maybe 30 people in a Facebook group. And what they do is that they get kind of behind the scenes access to your book launching process. So it's really common to have a book launch street team. However, it can be that you have this kind of street team that you're bringing along the journey with you, that you're taking along the ride, that you're telling them about all of the things that you're working on. You're making this process, you're giving them an inside view and glimpse into this process, because they are people who are going to be fans of your work. And if they're not a diehard fan yet, by giving them this kind of space to talk amongst each other, to have access to opportunities with you that other people aren't having access to, it helps you kind of create this intimate environment that's going to help support you in finishing getting the book written, and then also get the book launched when the book becomes available. So this kind of concludes this whole kind of leveraging various marketing channels. And it's not even necessarily all channels, but just different kind of like mediums, platforms, formats. There is a lot of information here. We just went through 6 significant kind of tips. And again, same thing with the previous section. If there's one out of this section that resonates with you, go do it, right? Like updating your email signature, super simple, easy one. Is it exposing? Sure. Is it going to make you cringe possibly for a while until you get used to it being there? Sure. But that's kind of part of this process. You know, it's like it's putting ourselves out of our comfort zone and really identifying the best ways that we can do that. The final section here, there are 5 tips within. And that is around building a supportive network and brand. And you'll kind of see that based on how all of these were framed, where it's building an early marketing foundation, leveraging various marketing channels, and building a supportive network and brand, a lot of these things kind of fall into different, can kind of fall into each other's bucket. So this one is just, again, a continuation. And the first thing we're going to talk about is updating LinkedIn. So if we want to build a supportive network, one of the things we want to do is make sure that our network is aware of what we are up to. So similar to your email signature, however, the email signature, there's kind of a component to it because you can choose to respond or not respond to an email. You can choose to remove that email signature in that particular response. So you have a lot more control. Whereas if you're updating your LinkedIn, you are putting yourself very much out there and you're making it clear to folks that your book is coming. So it is definitely something that is outside the majority of people's comfort zones, because what we're asking, you know, what the request here is to update your LinkedIn profile to show that you're a published author, that you're soon to be, that you're an aspiring author, that you're working on your book. It is in progress, because there is a publication section of LinkedIn where you can specifically include your book's title, subtitle, a description. All of this can be placeholder information from now. If you have a temporary working book title, use it. If you have, if you don't have a temporary subtitle, don't worry about it. Just put your book's temporary title, and then a description. Just write what your vision is for it. It doesn't have to be a copywritten description that was created by a professional. This is all just the starting part of this to help people see you in the light of being an author and showing people that you're working on this and adding that extra accountability to yourself. It definitely, for some, feels like we are putting the cart before the horse. And the reality when it comes to marketing in general, people don't typically start soon enough. But book marketing in particular is where people really miss the mark often, where as soon as you have that book idea, you really want to be talking about it. You want to be sharing it. You want to be getting information about it. You want to be getting feedback about it. Because if you wait until the book is published to start the marketing, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. Ideally, you want to start marketing it a good 3 months beforehand, 6 months beforehand, 12 months beforehand. The sooner you can start, the better off you'll be. However, with many, many people, they don't realize this and they don't start marketing the book until after the book is available. And that's okay too. It's just a different type of strategy, a different plan. You can kind of pivot, create a new plan. But if you want to give yourself the benefit of time and the benefit of creating a bigger and deeper network of people looking to buy your book later, then starting sooner is definitely going to be your best bet. Asking questions. So this is a little bit similar to kind of using polls, just kind of a different way of framing it, is we want to ask questions because as an author, there is really no expectation that you yourself have to be the one that knows everything about the topic. And I think that's where we get stuck as aspiring authors, is that we feel like we have to know everything there is to know about the topic that we're writing about, or else we don't have enough credibility to do this. But the reality is that every author is not an expert on everything related to their topic. My book just came out and it's writing, publishing, and marketing a book. There are so many things that I do not know related to different components of that. But what I do know is my process and what works and the framework that I've created and what works for authors. And that's really what matters. So when we're feeling like we are struggling with something, we can engage our potential reader by just asking questions, like asking them, what are the top things that you're focused on? What are the top, top questions that you have related to my topic? What's keeping you up at night? And really understanding what their pain points and what their challenges are. So that way you can make sure that your book addresses all of those. So on September 27th, I did the in-person launch for my book that came out on October 11th. And it was at the Mark Twain House in Hartford, Connecticut. And I had a panel. We had 21 different authors from all over the country who flew in or drove in and were on panels kind of talking about their experience as an author, how they got there, what their book's about, et cetera. And we did a Q&A at the end. And at the end, every single question that somebody had asked me, I was able to point specifically to a chapter in the book that addressed the answer. Every single one. There was not one that I was stumped on that the book did not cover. And that is not a coincidence. It was very intentional that I really looked through all of those common questions that people have over and over and over again. And I was able to address all of them in the form of the book. So that way the book is a comprehensive tool for someone to get from point A to point Z in getting their books written and then published and then ultimately marketed. So when we're thinking about your topic, what is the best way and what are the most common things that people are asking, and how can you make sure that your book addresses all of those so that way your book is the one that is providing that value and information to somebody. And then if they want to work with you beyond that, they have the option and the opportunity to work with you beyond that. They can say, hey, I really loved your book. You really answered all of the questions I have, but what I'm really looking for is someone to execute this work or someone to help me implement this work. Then they know that you're the trusted resource. So asking questions is really important. We don't want to ever feel like if I'm asking questions, it's going to make me look like I don't know what I'm talking about. It's the contrary. It's just making sure that you are seeing how people are asking questions, how they're framing their questions, and ultimately better able to write to those answers later when it's in the form of your book. Start collecting names. So this is very much building on that list of buyers. So it's slightly different because when we're looking at this is more, the list of buyers is a little bit more of like everyday conversations you're having with people. It's in an email, someone saw your email signature, someone saw the post, the update that went out because you updated your LinkedIn. It's people who are kind of saying, seeing that you're up to something cool. To start collecting names, on the other hand, is when you're going a little bit further and now you're saying, you're making a very clear social media post, for example, or a very clear request of your newsletter to say, hey, I am working on this book. I am super excited about it. If you are interested in being notified on updates of the book or when the book becomes available, please put your name and email address here. So, in here I have like MailChimp is a free tool, Google Forms, those are very easy to use. So it doesn't have to be super sophisticated. I think that's where a lot of us get stuck on a marketing side too, is that we feel like we have to have these big sophisticated programs that automate everything and create this whole cohesive system. You can use a very simple Google form. I was doing on October 11th, I was doing kind of like my book launch, and I was doing a book giveaway. And so it was just a simple Google form that has, the book's imagery on it. And it was like, hey, just put your name, click here, put your name in it. And then I'm going to just pull a random person from a hat, which is basically just pulling a name out of that Google form. So super simple, doesn't have to be complicated. But again, this helps to kind of validate your idea a little bit more. So you can start posting this every now and then to say, hey, I'm really still working on this book. I'm super excited that I have the cover available. I'm super excited that I started the editing process, whatever that might look like. And you can say, if you want to be notified when it becomes available, just put your name on this form. I did that with my memoir, because with my memoir, which came out in 2020, it's called House on Fire. I did not put a lot of effort into the marketing of it because I wanted to just see where the book would take me organically without me forcing it. And it's not advice that I would typically advise for somebody. And it's not the way that I've done the book launch for this one that just came out. This one has been a very long and sophisticated launch. But what I did then is I routinely was posting about it because it's a memoir. And so there's anniversary dates of certain things. There's, it's just certain months that have like a theme to them where you're like, hey, December 2nd is when the house burned down, and let me write a post about it and say, hey, just FYI, this is going to be included in the memoir. Just put your name on this form. And so I was able to collect a lot of names over probably a year period as I was writing it, and just get people interested in it. And so super simple, doesn't have to be complicated. And this does become a big piece of your marketing process later, because now you'll have all of these names and you'll have people who are interested. And now you can engage them maybe for your street team. Maybe they can be part of like a beta group. Maybe they can be early readers and they can kind of read what you're writing about. So there's a lot of different kind of directions that we can take this. The next one is finding something like a book club. I briefly mentioned book clubs earlier in here. Finding a book club, because book clubs are fantastic. Book clubs are amazing in so many ways if you have the right book for it, right? Like my book that just came out, I don't think it makes for a good book club book, to be honest, because I don't think that that's quite the right environment for it. But my memoir is a perfect book club book. So in the memoir, I actually have a list of book club questions listed at the end. So that way I can help facilitate the conversation. That way the book club host doesn't have to figure out, what the questions are they're going to be asking. They can obviously come up with their own, but at least they have a starting point. And book clubs are fantastic because they really help spread the word, right? So you have a group of people, they're all talking about it. They're all talking about their takeaway from it, their lesson learned, and then they're telling friends about it who are telling friends about it. And then you kind of get this, this more widespread impact. I did a number of book clubs as the author where I would go in and talk as a guest. So I had a bunch of book clubs reach out to say, hey, would you be willing to come in and to be our guest for this month? I'm like, heck yeah, I'd be happy to. So it's just one of those things. If your book lends itself to a book club format, this is something that you can start to kind of brainstorm. You can start to think about. You can start to think now, okay, I haven't written this book yet, but in the future, what would I want a book club to be talking about? What would I want the spark of that conversation to be? And this is where you might be able to get some more clarity on how you might go about writing your book. So memoirs are fantastic for book clubs, leadership books, business books, a lot of self-help books are great for book clubs. There's just sometimes like a very strict how-to type of book might not lend itself super well, but there's always a way in my experience to kind of make it fit and make it work. In this case, with my book that just came out, it didn't make sense for me to try to make it work. I just didn't, there's too many other opportunities that made more sense. But, in your case, you can check it out, see if it works for you. And you might not know the answer now, and that's okay. And then the final thing is just preparing an elevator pitch. Very old school, like we all have elevator pitches for what we do in our business or in our career. And the more clear and succinct we can get to with an elevator pitch, the more we can just get people interested in what we're writing about. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It could just be a single sentence that you have no idea what you're really saying. And then you can see like a spark of insight on someone's eyes. And you're like, okay, I said something different this time that got that person to understand what I'm writing about. So then you practice it again when you're talking to somebody else. And before long, you have this really clear, concrete way that you're explaining your book to people, which then might lead them to say, hey, can you let me know when the book becomes available? Or, hey, can you put me on an email list to be notified? Or, hey, are you doing pre-orders? Can I pre-buy it from you? And then you can mail it to me when it becomes available. It opens the door for all of these different opportunities and options for people. So that is preparing an elevator pitch, which I find is a good way to end it, because it just really, if nothing else in here, I think kind of coming up with some kind of pitch for your book. And I say pitch, but I feel like pitch isn't even the right word, because pitch feels like you're trying to sell somebody something, when really you're not really trying to sell them anything right now. You're just trying to convey and express what your idea is. But I find that if you can even just start with this one, if you didn't take away any of the other tips and just really start to think about, how would I explain my book concept to somebody in a really short period of time, what would I say? How would I say it? And then you can kind of further refine it from there. So with that, the other presentations that I've done of this 4-part series, the last 3, I have had very specific downloads that you can go download a sample chapter for one thing, a sample chapter for something else. This QR code will give you the entire ebook for free. So you're welcome to scan it, download it. You're welcome to share it with a friend. Just share the QR code with a friend. Because like I was saying before, at least with my book, like the more the merrier with this particular book, because I just really want to get it into the hands of the most people possible, however that happens. And in the very beginning of this presentation, I had mentioned that I would include my email address for those of you who were not live and participating, watching this conversation. So if there's any questions that you might have, you are welcome to send me an email. That is my actual email address, and I am spammed on a regular basis because I put my real email address out there, but I will happily answer any questions that you might have about any of these 4 parts that we covered over the last 4 weeks.
Thank you so much, Jen. Another great workshop, kind of landing the plane, as we say in this business. And as someone who just recently bought Jen's book for my wife, who is in the book publishing process, I can confirm she is about halfway through it now and is thoroughly enjoying the process. We only got it about a week or so ago. She is a voracious reader. I am not. So you'll just have to trust me when I tell you she's really enjoying it.
Awesome.
So once again, Jen, want to thank you so much for all of your terrific contributions to these 4 workshops, and the folks that have been participating for staying with us for the 4 weeks. We'll have all this workshop and all the other 3 on our YouTube channel as well, in case you missed one, you want to go back and check it out. But at this time, I don't see any questions in the chat or anything like that. So we'll go ahead and thank those folks who joined us. And thank you once again, Jen, for all your time and great contributions to these programs.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mike.